Edinburgh and all the way to northern parts of Scotland. So Dolly isn't letting anything go in terms of being a travel tourist. As we know, she's traveled around the world many times, and she's thoroughly enjoying this, and hopefully that cruise will come about.
So Dolly keeps her chin up, so that's good to hear. And we want to keep in touch with everybody we can. And probably too expensive for her to call in to attend the annual meeting. So, you see me gimping around a little bit. I had my right hip replaced Monday. Did not go as well. I had my left hip replaced 2 years ago. And I don't know whether I'm older, he's older, or there's something else happened. But 2 years ago, I was up walking around like 2 days later and driving 4 days later and, you know, back to work like 5 days later. This is the first time I've been out of the house since Monday, and it still takes me a cane to get along, and there's not really any pain. When you get rid of the arthritic hip, your pain kind of goes away. But I don't know what he did, but my leg swelled up like 4 times its normal size, so you know how hard it is to bend your knee or turn sideways or do anything when you've got that kind of swelling in there, and that's what's holding me back. That and when your leg's all swollen up and you twist it, it feels like all the staples are going to pop out, and that's a kind of a scary feeling too. So anyway, we're back up and moving again. Yes.
Just recognize our visitors.
Oh yes.
Yeah, our visitors.
Our visitors.
Niece, Danielle and her husband Nick, and they were. It's been 5 years since they were married.
Oh, 5 years! Congratulations and welcome. And if we don't have 8 people, you can sit and vote on the mission meeting.
And it's good to see Chris again as well.
Yes. Hi, Chris. All right. Let's see. And Derek is here today, and we're talking about climate. We're happy to have him here. I told you last week we would do a little bit on UU history since we got kind of started on that, so we're going to get a little on UU history as we go along. That's the genesis of this picture, is a lot of UU history. And we'll kind of bring that in as we go along because there's things we need to talk about. But the concentration this week is our annual meeting. So our welcome in your hymnal is 537. Our whole system. Small as is our whole system compared with the infinitude of creation, brief as is our life compared with the cycles of time, we are so tethered to all by the beautiful dependencies of the law, that not only the sparrow's fall is felt to the uttermost bound, but the vibrations set in motion by the words that we utter reach through all space, and the tremor is felt through all time. Maria Mitchell. Most important thoughts at this time of politics, your vote and your thoughts and your participation are required and most necessary. All right, prelude. Thanks, Roberta. Chalice lighting, opening for an annual meeting. And this is taken from the resource information from the UU website, so they are more aware than we are of what's going on. We gather today to take up the business of our congregation. We come to discuss important matters. Who shall lead us? How we shall spend our money. Details, small and large, that guide how we shall together be. We do this in order to do the work of the congregation, to find the lost, to lift up the sorrowful, to offer companionship and care to one another, to make the world we dream of the world we may attain. May we be kind in our speaking, thoughtful in our deliberating, and never stray from the love that binds us together. Opening hymn is number 12. Maketh all things new, true words never spoken, as I wear the new one today. All right, our affirmation agenda. This I put in like, I don't know, a week ago or a week and a half ago when I was starting it. I didn't realize how apropos it was going to be. I'm tired as I ascend the stairs to the main floor. I hear my shoes echo on the hard tiles and the clink of the door handle as I push it open. I feel the hard metal of the folding chair on my back. What a stark contrast to my curled up like a kitten position on my couch. The agenda looks long. When will I get home? What surprises and big decisions await us? The sweet cookie on my tongue temporarily distracts me from the task at hand. A spike of energy, I'll bet temporarily. I watch the flame of the chalice as the opening is read. My heart begins to open. I take a deep breath. There is much to discuss. Some in agreement, some not. But respect, trust, listening, understanding, voice. The people are genuine, kind, caring, working thoughtfully and thoroughly. And laughing too. They are nourishment for my soul. 2.5 hours have passed. The closing was read. The chalice was extinguished. I'm hesitant to leave. I'm saying goodbye, but the conversation evolves. I'm hesitant to leave. The agenda is concluded, but the connection is eternal. And I am transformed. All right, our children's story. Actually, before we do that, I have to venture into dangerous territory. with what's going on, you know, about the Republican convention, I just can't pass this up. If you notice on this side, this is J.D. Vance and his wife. What do you suppose that picture got around the Republican convention? What would happen? His wife is Hindu. And this is J.D. Vance, a quote from J.D. Vance some years ago. He wrote, "Fellow Christians, everyone is watching when we apologize for this man. Lord, help us." My sentiments exactly.
We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people of many paths who are brave, curious, and compassionate thinkers and doers. Every day, people are inundated with information, overwhelmed by demands, and pulled by a culture that seeks to divide us from the web of life. Unitarian Universalism reconnects, bringing people together with meaning and inspiration. We are a house without walls, a congregation without spiritual limits, and a movement that calls you to put more faith in yourself, your community, and your beliefs. We are a faith that honors your mind, your heart, your journey. Simply put, we are a guided path towards a better you and a better world. Grounded in hundreds of years of thoughtful, religious communities, we are people of many generations, ethnicities, genders and sexualities, and spiritual backgrounds. People engaged in making the world a better place. People focusing on what really matters: love, justice, integrity, and hope. Unitarian Universalists have different beliefs, but shared values. We are Unitarian Universalists, and at the same time, we may also be agnostic, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, humanist, Jewish, Muslim, pagan, atheist, believers in God, and those who let the great mystery be. The diversity of beliefs you will find in a Unitarian Universalist community is one of our strengths. We are always learning how to see the world from a different perspective. What unites us are our core principles that uphold 7 real-world values: believing in the worthiness of every person, showing compassion and fairness, accepting others for who they are, growing through a personal search for truth, leading with democratic spirit, working for justice, and understanding that everything is interconnected. 7 days a week, Unitarian Universalists live these principles out do. When we gather, we worship, reflect, and remind ourselves what matters most in life. Whatever our age, we learn to live with more wisdom, more awareness, more gratitude, and more soul. We show our values by showing up to answer the call for social justice. We have a track record of standing on the side of love for civil rights, LGBTQ equality, immigration reform, environmental sustainability, reproductive justice, racial justice, and more. Find what it means to live your deepest values out loud. Join us on this extraordinary adventure of faith.
What do you think? I thought that was a pretty tremendous encapsulation. Something that I'm tempted to put on my phone and carry around, and when somebody asks me what's a UU, I say, watch this. All right, joys and concerns. I guess we'll light a candle for Cecil, and I'm going to call her after church. And if we can get the seminar phone set up, we'll do that. If not, we'll just kind of keep the line open and let her know what's going on. She can give her opinion. Hopefully there's not a medical problem going on. Because you know when you get to be our age, that can happen at any time. All right, we'll light a candle for Ukraine as we do every week. Not much change. Their future hangs in the balance of our election. The one side, including J.D. Vance, saying they do not want to support the Ukrainians at all, and they want to support the Russians, and they're all supporters of Putin, which I think would be a disaster, but that's my personal opinion. We want to light a candle for Israel. Even more news, the Israelis claiming that the Palestinians and Hamas are hiding in the hospitals. 24 of the 36 hospitals in Gaza have been destroyed, completely leveled to the ground. The thought pattern that I had heard expressed was that this is one way you destroy a community, you destroy a people, you destroy a culture, is you take away all their medical care. And the Israelis are online to do that. The doctors in the hospitals all say and swear that Hamas is not operating in the hospitals. The Israelis have raided the hospitals and pulled some examples of weapons out, so they say that Hamas is operating in the hospitals. The cultural and philosophical and spiritual question is, how much do you destroy the innocent to get to the guilty? And that question goes on. I guess we'll light a candle for climate. If you watch the news, the West is burning. Everybody's hot, way, way hot. 108 degrees in Spokane, Washington. And in Washington, they're not used to using air conditioning because it never gets that hot there. The South, like Florida, is flooding. Even on non-hurricane days, just a regular storm will flood Miami. And the government down there has said we will not talk about climate science and we will not talk about remediation. We will talk about building the beach walls higher and raising the streets, but we won't talk about why it's happening or one way to stop it from happening. And we'll talk about the future of humanity as we go along. Anything else? Yes, Derek.
I'd simply have a candle lit asking for traveling mercies. When we're done here this morning, I'll be driving up to Oakland County, Michigan to see my mom.
Good. I'm sure she will appreciate that. And I guess, let me light a candle for Curly. Y'all know Curly, my harness racer, pacer. He's had multiple treatments, had a year off. He's now racing again. I don't think we have him in condition right, or maybe he's lost some of his spirit. He led the last race at Scioto Downs. He led the entire race and then just faded. In the last 20 yards, he went from first to fifth in 20 yards, which normally he's the one who's in fifth and ends up in first. But he has finished third and second in 2 or 3 races, which means he's not costing me a lot of money yet. He's not making me a bunch either. All right. Anything else? Joys or concerns? All right, one final candle for those thoughts and prayers, those fears and discrepancies, those little dangers, things that you cannot speak. Maybe you don't even realize is there. We are here as a group, as a community, as a church to help in any way we can. The only thing we don't do is hand out money. All right. Message, how we talk about climate science. And that's our picture, the difference between climate, caring for the climate, and ignoring the climate.
Thank you for having me in the pulpit again as your guest. It's been a little while, but not that long. Thank you as well to the El Dorado congregation for giving me the freedom to step away from there every now and then to help out our neighbors up here. Well, as a few of you know, I'm kind of an oddball as ministers go because before I became a minister, I was actually a scientist. I worked in geophysics, and that's what my bachelor's degree was such a long time ago. So every now and then I follow scientific news, and in late August of last year, there's a climate scientist named Patrick Brown from Berkeley's Breakthrough Institute, who along with 7 other colleagues published a study in the journal Nature about connections between wildfires in California and global warming. The paper was very standard fare. It used computer modeling and those large data sets where they just get as much statistics as they can, glom them together, and run the computer scenario. And the conclusion was that climate change was making wildfires in California more extreme. But a few months later, Dr. Brown and his team made a public statement that their research may not be trustworthy. After publication, they discovered that some of the data sets were incomplete. I don't know how, but I'm imagining, having done the work, maybe some of it was daily temperatures, but other sets were like weekly averages, and that's really a hard thing to compare. But this meant that other factors that they thought had been included had been left out, and the result being that the paper was more alarming than insightful. It wasn't that the paper was false or fake, but that it left out data they thought should be included. So they wanted the paper withdrawn. And the reactions were predictably swift. Almost immediately, people who disbelieved climate change began citing Dr. Brown's withdrawal of his research as proof that global warming is a hoax perpetrated by a scientific conspiracy among researchers with a woke agenda. And at the same time, climate activists skewered Dr. Brown as being unhinged and unethical. His words, they said, could bolster a new wave of climate denialism. Dr. Brown, stated one activist who works to debunk misinformation, has caused durable material harm to climate progress. It is no good end at all. But privately, some researchers have expressed sympathy. Dr. Brown never questioned the reality of climate change. It's what he works on, or the importance of doing the investigation. Neither did he falsify any data at any time. He had just pointed out a place where, after the fact, he and his team figured out that their data set was crucially incomplete. Therefore, his conclusions were not as reliable as he previously thought, and so his research team wanted their research withdrawn while they did it all over again to ensure that they had all the data they thought they needed. Nuance can be difficult to maintain in our culture. I'm going to repeat this. Nuance can be difficult to maintain in our culture. People demand clear winners and losers. And they do this in a context of crisis and emotion. And we live at a time when scientists face increasing attacks from politicians, organizations, sometimes funded by industrial interests, as well as random social media trolls who feel that they have a right to present and sometimes misrepresent what the scientists put out there. Climate deniers say that scientists are hysterical and alarmist, and there are climate advocates who cannot tolerate any admission that the science is sometimes complicated and can even get things wrong and needs to be done again. Almost 2,000 years ago, St. Paul noted that we need to speak with honesty when we speak with our neighbors, and today the whole world is our neighbors. The exhaust from my car can affect the weather in Bangladesh. St. Paul also noted that we are all one body, an echo with the current reality that we are one human family connected across the planet. From the letter to the Ephesians, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. But people often misunderstand what science is. That is why I as somebody who's a minister who used to be a scientist sometimes speaks on science from the pulpit. People think that science is a collection of just kind of authoritative dogma. There's no such thing as climate change, it's all weather. Climate change will soon make the world completely uninhabitable. But I gotta tell you, science is not a set of doctrines, but a process for investigation. It asks us to collect data, make observations, conduct experiments, falsify some things, and draw conclusions about others. And it is always subject to revision as more information is added to the data set. Our current highly conflict-driven culture does not make much room beyond concepts of winners and losers and dogmatic attachments. And this puts at risk foundational ideas about open inquiry, debate, rigorous evidence based on critique. And there is a difference between honest, skeptical investigation and, on the other hand, questions that are insincerely asked because they're crafted to purvey false narratives and misinformation. So it's not always crystal clear where the line is. But science is an ever-evolving body of knowledge. There are physical data about climate that are clear, fact. The planet is warmer than it used to be. How that interacts with water tables, vegetation, wildfires, that's an evolving understanding as researchers gather more information and make their approximations and then their adjustments, and more information and their adjustments. And I know it can be frustrating. Anyone who has ever been told in the last 30 years that they have a cholesterol problem understands the frustration of the scientific data creating changes in our conclusions. I remember when I was lectured that I should never eat eggs, only to be told 15 years later, yeah, it's okay, as long as you don't eat tons of them and they're not slathered in cheese. About 6 a week, you'll be fine. A Dr. Caldas from the Union of Concerned Scientists said in a recent interview, science is not yes or no, because science is constantly gathering new information. Take the COVID pandemic and how recommendations changed. Now I remember this. Don't wear a mask. They won't help anybody. And then later, you must wear a mask, or you'll spread the stuff around. And then later still, if you're going to wear a mask, most of the time you wear a mask, it needs to be an N95 mask, because that's the stuff that will stop it from spreading. So we need to do this, but not that, and then later that other thing. Why? Because our knowledge is always incomplete, and our conclusions keep evolving as we hopefully better and better approach the reality of the natural world. But like I said, it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating. What am I supposed to do now? What? But earlier you told me that thing. The scientists are not just jerking you around. They actually genuinely change their conclusion. Dr. Patrick Brown at Berkeley's Breakthrough Institute, reflecting on his own self-critique of his own research, said this: after saying what I said, the perception that I got was that I was on the bad side and that I'm a bad person, which hurts, which is unfortunate because I'm trying to thread a needle. I'm trying to be honest about what I know and about what I think about what I know. And it's increasingly difficult because people like to be on teams. Lots of people see things as good team versus bad team. And the goal is not to get things truthfully right, but to defeat the bad team. And Dr. Brown concludes that interview saying, we can do better. We can do better. And I also say that, yes, we can do better. We should do better. Human civilization depends on us doing better. Friends and neighbors, Universalist theologians for the past 200 years have warned us about too easily breaking the human population into good team, bad team. These people are saved, these people are damned, or these people are the enlightened and these are the unenlightened. Because all too often we are a mixture of those things. And our hope is that through divine movement, spiritual inspiration, and hard human work, we all can land in a place that is better than the one we are in right now. So with that said, I'm going to do the risky thing that always happens here, but it's a wonderful thing. This church is not unique here, but this is one of a small number of churches that practice that the message is not entirely left up to the minister, to the preacher. The congregation gets to enjoy a dialogue among themselves and with the minister about the topics at hand. Because in striving and investigating, we can grow in soul and spirit and come out those doors in a place where we are wiser and more compassionate. At least that's my hope in the process. So now I'm going to open things up to the dialogue, the questions you may have, the things you might wonder about, the insights you have to share. Just remember when we speak, try to make your spoken ministry constructive. What is on your hearts and minds this morning?
So are you confirmed and locked into your good team, bad team understanding? Because I used to feel that way, but I'm beginning to see the bad team. I saw last week with example after example after example of nothing but bad team.
Well, there are value judgments that we are allowed and encouraged to make. It is a risky thing, though, to paint with a broad brush. There are I'm trying to be careful and nuanced here, because that's what good ministry is made of. I have very bad memories from my childhood of preachers who would make political pronouncements from the pulpit, assuming that everyone in the room was on board and that nobody had a good dissenting reason for thinking otherwise. I also say this knowing that I have a few friends back in Richmond who are Republican politicians. I know them pretty well. I trust them. I would vote for them. Most of the time, I don't vote for Republicans. Shh. I don't usually say this from the pulpit because we're treading in dangerous territory. And part of it is that as nonprofit houses of worship, we are not supposed to endorse candidates or parties from the pulpit. That violates nonprofit. It also sets up circumstances where politics begins masquerading as religion. which certain kinds of fundamentalists would freely love to indulge in. I, however, have more integrity than that. Do I think there are bad teams? I try to avoid it. Do I make value judgments about things that people do? Yeah, I do. I do. Because I want to live in a nation where democratic processes are respected. I want a nation where I, as a gay man who am married, I have been with my partner for almost 25 years, I would like that respected, legally. Legally. I have been married longer than my parents managed to do it. That's something. That should get some respect, legally speaking. I want to live in a nation where we're at relative peace with one another, where I don't have to worry that my safety is dependent on my ability to pull a gun and use it on somebody. And I say that as somebody who in 2015, I don't know how many of you know this, I was threatened with murder by a neighbor who didn't want me in my home. And of course, I had relatives who said, Derek, you need to get a handgun. Yeah, that assumes I'm willing to use it first. So yeah, try to avoid the team thing. Because it very easily leads to that place of partialism where we go, you know, those people are just damned and going to hell. Which is the thing that Universalists have been resisting for over 200 years. You can make value judgments too. I freely encourage you to do it.
It's not the value judgment. It's not judging them as good people or bad people. It's what happens if the bad team takes power. 2025, the 2025 plan.
Oh yeah.
Their whole plan is to totally unwrap and undo gay marriage. It's to, if you read that or see any information on it, and this is not some pie in the sky thing. They have hundreds of people planning this who were not in the last administration. The most interesting thing is all of the people in the last administration, all of the executives and the lead heads of departments, 99% of them saying the whole thing was a disaster and they would never do it again, but they won't say it publicly. But the people that we put into power the next time are more than willing to follow down that path. And we can't say we're not going to fight this because everybody has an opportunity to turn to the good side, when if the bad side takes over, we are in deep doo-doo.
Don't bury your heads in the sand, but be careful. Be careful, because I know there are people that would look at us and look at me and draw inaccurate conclusions about who I am, what I do, and why I do it. And might have me dead wrong. I'm going to tell you, I have a very good family member who I love. And he is probably totally on board with the amount of the political stuff that you saw. And he is clueless about the consequences to me. Do I write him off?
I'm not talking writing off. I'm saying what is the way to reach these people? All of this interest and all of this.
Oh, you want to know how to reach people?
We want to know how to bring people from the darkness into the light. We want to have a conversion therapy.
I will tell you, as a gay man, the biggest thing that changes people's opinions about me is knowing me. Build relationships with people. Build relationships with people. And you can always put out there, kindly, strongly, you know what? When people say and do X, I don't feel safe. I worry about the spread of illness in a world where we deny the results of science. I worry about the fact that the leading cause of death for children is now gunshots. Put it out there. People's hearts and minds change through relationship. And I fear that all too often, what happens is what happened to Dr. Brown. people make a judgment, sort people into teams, and say, well, you're either, or you have done horrible, horrible damage and you're a bad person. And we want nothing to do with you. The future is going to be difficult, Tim. I have no illusion about it. That is why I cultivate spiritual community.
That's why I'm pursuing real estate in Canada.
Canada's a nice place. I have vacationed there many times.
But you can't immigrate without a lot of problems. You can live there 6 months. So
I don't have a job. Plus, Jason and I have committed to living in Richmond for the next 5 years. So, all our families here. Let's move. Ron.
Yeah, well, I just went, there are three things that you brought up, and I think I could offer some insights into them in terms of, I call it critical thinking. Okay, I mean, that's basically, I have taught writing, and people think that's what I teach, but really what I'm teaching when I teach critical writing is critical thinking, because that is the category that you have to work. Now, the first one I'm going to address is I have listened to more people that I never thought would ever say they would leave the United States under any circumstance, but now I'm hearing from people I never thought I would hear from. Trump gets elected, I'm gone. Okay, and that's just the way they feel about it, because they feel it's out of their control at that point. Now, what's relevant in all of this is three things. Number one, I want to point out, I just read an article, and I'm willing to share it if people want to give me an email or what have you. And it's an insight into technology. We've been sold to think that technology will change our lives, or it will make a huge difference in the way the world works, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, and there's been a lot of studies on this, when you look at it, what you find is that never happens. Okay, what happens is we accommodate the use of that technology into old patterns of behavior. So consequently, what you're thinking about is here we have most of the technology that we're dealing with relies upon the generation of electrical power. And that's where the issue comes in, is how do we generate that power as we come through it. But nobody goes beyond that. And that this creates a difference that I try to get across to my students, and I think I succeed maybe 10 to 15% of the time, okay, is that there's a huge difference between facts of knowledge and knowledge. Okay, facts of knowledge, there's this, we can just gather, the world is round, okay, that's a fact. Well, people thought the world was flat at one point, and that was a fact. All right, and that's problematic when you start talking about facts. But where knowledge comes in is that I have a fact, and I can use it in a particular way, and I understand how that use relates to the fact, and how that fact relates to everything else. And that's knowledge, because it's an experience. We take that into our experience, and we pull it in. Now we know which is where knowledge comes from. Okay, and then finally, on all of that, where I'm leading with all of this, the problem that we're facing, you have to understand, when people believe that God created Earth and that God is involved in everything that we do, science hasn't got a shot, because that's all settled as far as they're concerned. And so, all of a sudden, when they're being fed all of these facts, okay, of what God is, where God is, what life means, and so forth and so on, the rest of that, when all of a sudden we start talking to them, but yeah, but look, it's falling apart. I mean, the world, we have a problem here, okay, as we're going through it. And I just saw a beautiful meme, okay, showing it in reflexiveness. They were saying, here's a picture of how most evangelical or most right Christians view God and this war. He's on his knees with a bunch of toy tanks shoving away. He has the right there, just to pull this all the time, and that's how they see it. And the fact of the matter is that when we're talking about climate change, actually a lot of that, and you were hinting to this, okay, as it goes on, a lot of that comes from the fact that there's just too doggone many of us on the face of this earth, okay? And there's this demand for all of these resources that can only be met by chewing up the earth and spitting it out. regenerative, renewable source of energy that is not of danger to the climate.
I'll also point out something, you hinted at it. We are foundationally just like Ice Age mammals with iPhones. And it's really hard for people in general to contemplate geologic time. I've done this exercise with students back in the day. Like, it's really hard to think of geologic time. The fact that, like, Richmond and this used to be under the ocean 300 million years ago. It's full of brachiopods and other, like, shell-filled sea creatures. That's really hard because we think that the world is mostly the way we see it right now, and that it's mostly been that way. And so it's hard to imagine like that scope of change. Yeah. Mike, you've had your hand up a couple times.
Well, I was fascinated. I think we're pretty good thinkers. God has endowed us with that. Evolution has led us to become even better thinkers. I'd like to think. However, the concept of geologic time, as you just mentioned, is totally out of our realm. If you really think about it in terms of time, okay, we're living a lifetime of 75, 85, 105 years, whatever, somewhere in there. But the bottom line is that's nothing compared to the thousands and thousands and millions of years. And so, as you point out, you have to look at the long stretch, but no one wants to look at the long stretch because of two reasons. One, we're incapable of thinking back through those years, but also because binary thinking, binary decisions, the binary way of life is easy. It's simple. It's yes, no, true, false, 0, 1. Don't like you, Republican, Democrat. It's all binary, and it's so easy, except that when it boils down to, we can't make this a binary solution. It's not either or, okay? It's based on, as Derek points out, it's based on tons of data, and particularly in the area of science, but the average person doesn't want to think about that science part. When we read science, we read in a book, and it's fact, because it's in our book, in junior high science, and high school science, and college science, but it really isn't, but it's represented as fact. The key is inferencing. Read those facts, and then attempt to develop knowledge from that with others for the betterment of all. Well, that sounds rather lofty, but the way I infer from what I just read and what you infer is based on your experience. Okay? And everybody has different experiences, but if we want to make it simple, just keep believing it's just yes, no, true, false, 1, 0. Don't like you, Republican, Democrat. The world doesn't work that way. But not everyone thinks that, according to my thoughts.
Well, I'm going to finish up and head back to my seat. But remember, if there's anything I want you to take home, it is the idea that in matters of science and religion, I want you to think critically, and I want you to think beyond just those binaries, where things are absolutely black and white, right, wrong, true, false, because the world is more complicated than that. And if we're really trying to voyage towards what is true and useful so that we can be compassionate human beings and build up one another, then we need to be able to stomach a certain amount of complexity. This is a challenge. All right. I apologize for getting too involved in the presentation. We're going to run a little bit long, but that is the whole point of this church. Think for yourself and don't be afraid to let other people know. I just checked. I just had a buzz on my phone. Someone named Antonia is watching on Facebook. Welcome, Antonia. She used to be here some years ago.
You're always welcome to come back, or you're always welcome to watch on Facebook. And I'll throw in one little change. If you don't think climate change is affecting the world, the ice caps are melting at the top of the Antarctic and Arctic, and the water is pooling at the equator. What happens when water pools at the equator? The Earth's circumference grows, even minimally. So as a result, the rotation of the Earth is actually slowing. The days are getting longer. Not so you can measure, but in microseconds. But if that continues, that change will continue, and you talk about climate change, what difference is that going to make? All right, offering. If you have something to contribute, please do. If you need something, please contact us, and we will help you in any way we can. So nice to have Ty's voice back with us again. Closing hymn 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Let us pay attention and believe wholeheartedly.
Yes.
hymn of grateful praise. Extinguishing the chalice is number 688 in the back of your hymnal. 688. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you. Words from Nancy Wood. All right, our horse picture, for those of you who don't come here on a regular basis, I'm kind of a horse nut. So the last picture of every slideshow has got something to do with horses. Usually it's a section called Between My Ears or Between the Ears, which is from the rider's perspective, between the horse's ears, things they observe. We're kind of branching out now. I happen to find this picture which matched the other one. Why horse owners should care about climate change. And we're not going into that because we're already over. There are donuts back there. Unfortunately, they're not day old because I didn't get to Kroger's all week long because I was laid up. So they're 2 days old because they're the donuts we had last week. But they've been in the freezer, so they're still edible. I guarantee it. I've sampled, and I always make sure before I serve it to you. All right, that closes our service at First Universalist. Please stay for the congregational meeting. Whether you're a member or not, you're always welcome to attend and voice your opinion.
And we'll do the social for a while.
Yes, we're going to have coffee and donuts.
You don't want to stay for the meeting. Feel free to socialize a bit.
And there actually are nuclear whatever prepared things back there. That little Debbie cakes that will be here in a million years when the world turns around and comes back again. If you don't like day old donuts, you can have a little Debbie. Oh, postload. Yes, sorry. Don't let me get by without missing something, because it doesn't bother me, and we need to hear Lloyd's contribution. Music is a very important part of the church.
Oh, yeah.
She was less verbal about things.
Let's all help approve it. I knew you wouldn't be there, so I
Great, thank you. That's pretty much what I buy, and it's like when they're a day old, it's like a day old. It's not like they're still fresh.
Too big of a machine. But now, there's an older things and pretty good.
are you sleeping and then these are positive. As God says. And maybe it's so what I always surprise them is happening. This is how we treat it. And that's how dangerous.